So I've just completed a cruise on what is arguably one of the shortest and cheapest cruises in the entire world on board the Margaritaville at Sea Paradise cruise ship. And as many of you know, this wasn't my first time sailing on board this cruise ship because I did when it first launched back in 2022. And even at that point in time, I said I would never sail on that cruise ship ever again. However, I went back and I'm going to share my experience with you. Of course, throughout this review, I will be outlining everything from the food, the entertainment, the ambiance, the rooms, the cost, essentially all of the little giblets you may be curious about within the entire experience of my time on board the Margaritaville at Sea Paradise. However, full transparency, Margaritaville at Sea did indeed invite me to come check out the Margaritaville at Sea Paradise once again because, let's be honest, my last review was very blunt. I don't think it was bad. I did say it was a starter pack cruise line. However, there were some good points, but they said they have now since renovated the Margaritaville at Sea Paradise and they wanted me to see if things had changed as far as my opinions. But do keep in mind, as usual, I am honest and, well, very transparent. So let's see what happened during my experience on board this ship. So as we sail into this review, sometimes in order to go forward, we need to go back. I do want to give you guys an overview as to how Margaritaville at Sea, the brand, came to be. But in order to do that, we're going to go take a little visit to 2022J, and I'll see you in a second. Margaritaville at Sea is a brand new cruise line on a technical level. The one ship that sails under the name was once called the Costa Classica. It was built in 1991, so it's a 31-year-old ship that originally was sailing under Costa Cruise Line, the Italian cruise line based over in Europe with the Carnival Corporation. In 2018, a little cruise line that could, known as Bahamas Paradise, bought that ship and renamed it the Grand Classica. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, Bahamas Paradise did suffer a little bit, and eventually, well, they lost one of their ships out of the two, leaving only the Grand Classica. And then eventually, here in 2022, we had Margaritaville at Sea be named, in which they did turn the Grand Classica into Margaritaville at Sea Paradise. The Margaritaville at Sea Paradise cruise ship has 14 decks, holds just over 1,200 passengers at full capacity, and believe it or not, is conducting 2, 3, 4, and 5 night sailings out of West Palm Beach, Florida, going over to the Caribbean. And for my specific sailing, I did a back-to-back two-day sailings on board this ship. This brand does currently have 2 ships within its fleet. You do have the Margaritaville Sea at Paradise cruise ship over in West Palm Beach, and here in my city of Tampa, as I mentioned earlier, you do have the technically new Margaritaville at Sea Islander, which is a newer ship, and honestly, I had a great time there. If you guys want to watch that honest review, I will leave it right up here, as well as pinned in the comment section. So on the first day of my cruise, or embarkation day, I did arrive to the port of West Palm. I actually hadn't been there in a number of years, so I was excited to go back. The first thing I noticed was that they did organize the parking a little bit better. However, in terms of the pricing, I had 2 back-to-back two-day cruises to take. The parking for each 2-day cruise was $57, so you're talking about $114 for the entirety of my time over there. Walking to the terminal was overall pretty streamlined and standard. I would just simply drop my bag off. However, thank you Margaritaville for doing this, but they were gracious enough to give me an express or VIP pass, and I had absolutely no problem getting in. But in terms of what I saw of the normal people, things looked a little bit better and systematic in terms of having a decent flow of getting the passengers inside of the terminal within a timely manner. So honestly, if I had gotten VIP or not, I don't think it would have taken too long, but this may have been due to the fact that I got there earlier than maybe the giant bulk of the crowd that could have potentially got there. But either way, I would say they've definitely done a better job organizing. Yeah, by the way, to signify that I was indeed VIP for this cruise, I had to hold up and carry with me a flip-flop, which I think obviously is in great taste and branding to the Margaritaville Jimmy Buffett, may he rest in peace, Parrothead brand. And just like that, I was able to go to the VIP area where I was able to indulge in the lounge over there, which I thought overall, considering what the line does offer to a lot of passengers, was a nice little touch to kind of separate you from the rest of the pack. I was able to check in there, hang out there, get some drinks and snacks until it was time for me to board, which of course I would be one of the first passengers to be allowed to board the Margaritaville Sea Paradise. Either way, of course, for the normal passengers as well, the terminal I do think was a lot better structured and honestly looked cleaner from when I had last been there. And of course, inside of the terminal, prior to even boarding, you can purchase your extras, whether it be the steakhouse or any other little giblets in terms of the beverages, get your photos, the standard cruise stuff. And I do think that's a cool option prior to getting on board, so you don't have to deal with that mess while you're on board if you don't want to. Now, of course, once I did board the Margaritaville at Sea Paradise cruise ship, the first thing that I noticed right in my face was the Margaritaville flip-flop. You know, it's legendary, and it's right there in the, well, I guess you can call the atrium area. Over there, they also have like your customer service. But nevertheless, the first thing I did was go up the elevator and straight to my room on deck 7. I had a '04 Ocean View, I believe it was called, cabin number 7111. One thing I always have liked about this ship, because I have been sailing on this ship since back in 2021, when it was just the little cruise line that could, Bahamas Paradise, is that the ocean views are considerably larger than you would see on really any modern cruise ship. I did notice immediately the renovations. It seemed like they actually put some time and decor into the room to give it that real Margaritaville feel. Now you're probably asking, what about a balcony? Why not just get one of those? Well, this ship is a little bit older and seasoned, meaning there's literally only 10 balcony rooms on board, and all of those are actually Grand Terrace suites. Obviously, the room in itself was pretty nicely done. Better than, like I said, last time I saw it. The overall functionality of the room, I was completely fine with. As far as the bathroom, it did the job. I'm not a huge fan of these shower curtains, but either way, considering the age of the ship and the noticeable improvements, I didn't really have any complaints. As far as the pricing overall, it does vary. Do keep in mind, this ship specifically is doing anywhere between 2-day sailings up to 5-day sailings. And from what I saw, it does typically average anywhere between $200 per person up to $500 per person. Now, exploring the Margaritaville at Sea Paradise cruise ship, I did quickly notice that overall the aesthetics and decor had changed to a certain degree, to a point to where, honestly, considering where it was, as many of you know, it was a lot more tolerable and digestible, whether you are a first-time cruiser or somebody that wanted a quick getaway. And I will spoil the ending for all of you guys. I do have a lot more I have to add later on. But it became very obvious to me that this cruise line had started to find somewhat of its groove and structure. We can question, of course, the age of the ship and the longevity of it all, which I will go over later. But I do believe overall, for first responders, which they do sail free, by the way, and people that want just a quick little getaway, this ship definitely, at least as far as the aesthetics in this review so far, was doing the job in my opinion. Up until the sail away, while I was walking around, I noticed there were a ton of bars on board, and overall from what I've seen from the pool deck area, the service from what I saw was absolutely immaculate. They had a lot of bar staff that was coming by and taking drinks, and for me, from what I personally experienced, bringing the drinks within a timely manner. The sail away party, I gotta admit, was genuinely a lot of fun. Very organic. Everybody was out there shaking a tail feather. The DJ was pretty good. They had some of the staff out there having a good time, similar to what you'd see at a standard sail away party for other lines, but this one did give off a pretty cool vibe. You guys know I danced a little bit and had some fun. The actual sail away in and of itself may not be as pretty if you were sailing out of, let's say, a Miami, a Fort Lauderdale, or somewhere else. It was definitely a sail away nonetheless, and it kind of had its own flavor or taste to it that I enjoyed. Going over the overall vibe and even demographic on board the Margaritaville at Sea Paradise, I gotta admit, I genuinely enjoy going on board cruise ships like this because I consider it like your average Joe's cruise line. Nobody is there trying to act like they're fancy or bougie or that they're better than everybody else, because everybody there, whether they be a first responder because they were able to get on board with paying maybe just the port taxes and fees, or people that are locals nearby. I met some people that are from Virginia and from New York, which I was genuinely shocked. Those people literally drove or flew all the way from New York and all these places just to get on board this little cruise line that could, well, former when it comes to Margaritaville. But overall, I would just say the people there was a nice mix. There was nothing crazy, no drama. It was just overall a good vibe with normal, common folk. Okay, so let's talk about the food, because personally, I am a little torn when it comes to this category, given I'm not a foodie, so do keep that in mind. The experience overall in terms of the food, none of it was bad. In terms of service, it is kind of great, and then some areas were not so great. Most of the time, I did get sushi a lot. I believe it was Far Side Sushi. That was a new addition. It wasn't there last time I was on board this ship. The sushi there was absolutely delicious. I got the JWB Steakhouse. And overall, I do love a good filet mignon. They did make the steak the way I like it. Blue, very, very rare. I will say the service, in my personal opinion, was a teeny tiny bit slow, but These things happen here and there. I would just say maybe improve there. The Finn's main dining room, same somewhat issue, but I didn't go there too often. Getting into my favorite category, the entertainment. I do have to admit, I didn't expect too much going into this. I figured there'd be some slight improvements considering the last time I was on board the specific ship, but well, in the beginning, it was okay, but toward the end, well, let's just say the second day of the cruise, it got so much better. They had aerialists, and the show flowed really well. I did really like the second production show. I apologize, I forgot the name of it. But wow, it was really a great show overall. And as somebody that has not only worked for multiple cruise lines, I've worked at theme parks, I've worked for traveling, touring, famous basketball companies all over the world and other entertainment companies. I do have, I want to say, a different eye as far as specifics and what I consider to be a good show and what isn't. But once again, just like the other categories I've named so far, considering what you're paying and the overall length of the cruise, I do believe it's either going to meet your expectations or rise slightly above it. There is a lot going on around the ship. Of course, you do have your karaoke as well, and you have your bands that are over there playing. And I do believe for, again, everything that encompasses this specific ship, considering its age and all that other jazz, it definitely does do the job for your average cruiser that's just coming and having a quick getaway or just kind of getting their feet wet with cruising. As far as our one and only port of call, stop, or destination during this cruise, do keep in mind, again, I did a back-to-back, but it was literally the exact same itinerary. Typically with Margaritaville, at least when I went on board 2 years ago, we would stop at Grand Bahamas. However, we would call or visit the port of Nassau, Bahamas. And what's really cool about the Margaritaville at Sea brand, they have a Margaritaville resort that you can visit specifically over in Nassau, Bahamas. I do believe that personally, it is a nice compliment. As somebody that is, well, I don't consider Nassau to be my favorite port. Every now and then I'll go to Goodman's Bay and ride a jet ski, or I'll go to Fish Fry or Senior Frogs, but considering there's a resort to complement the Margaritaville brand with Margaritaville at Sea, the Paradise, or even the Islander, it is a nice little connection. They did give me passes to go check out the resort, and I'll be honest, it didn't blow me away, but considering the beach area and just a nice place to relax, eat, drink, and have a good time, it is something I do believe that should go hand in hand should you decide to go on a Margaritaville cruise. As far as the nightlife, it was nothing crazy, but there was some activity going on. Aside from, of course, the shows, you got your casino in there as well, you've got your karaoke, and then the nightclub, they did change it around. Typically, they'd have it, I forgot the name of these venues, but they usually would have the nightlife and DJ in the same destination that they would have the karaoke. However, there was a bar upstairs. I believe it was shut down last time I was there, but it was a nice little overview of the ship during the evening hours. And well, the DJ was nice overall. The actual area was pretty decent, the dance floor, and people were shaking a tail feather and having a good time and having drinks, and it was like your standard cruise ship party. However, do keep in mind, I was there during the week at the time. I do believe during the weekend, people are going to be a little bit more, I want to say, lively. I danced a little bit here and there, but it was overall pretty standard, and I did like the fact that they actually made sure security was checking the age and everything, because you go on some ships sometimes, you have 15, 16, 17-year-olds, people that are underage that are kind of slipping through the cracks and going to the nightclub and potentially causing problems that don't need to be there. So they were definitely on it. So, of course, shout out to Margaritaville for that. Honestly, both of these back-to-back cruises were pretty standard. Disembarking was absolutely not a problem at all. I actually got off quicker than most people because most of the people on board were local and honestly did not have a passport. Get your passports, ladies and gentlemen. I've explained why in many of my videos, but they do divide the lines in people that have a passport versus people that have a birth certificate. So I was able to get off, honestly, within, I want to say about 10 to 15 minutes, but I would imagine even in normal settings or if you don't have a passport, there aren't a million passengers on board where it will take you hours and hours to disembark. So you won't have to worry about that considering the ship only holds about 12 to 1,300 people. But overall, looking at the entire experience, this ship does not have all the bells and whistles. You're not going to get on there and say, wow, and just be in awe of what you're seeing. Unless maybe it's your first time. If that's the case, yeah. Do I still have my same sentiment as last time? For the most part, yeah, I do believe it's a great starter cruise for people that haven't cruised before. Do I believe that it is something that is for poor people or anything like that? No, I absolutely do not, especially with the first responders or people that I would argue locally or maybe in the Florida area. It's not a bad getaway if you have a weekend or a couple days off you want to spend with your significant other and you're not trying to go too crazy or bathe in luxury. It's a quick getaway and there's going to be average people there. And obviously the price is not bad. Are there other options? Absolutely. Do I think that they've improved in terms of the renovation? Yeah, definitely. I still prefer the Islander. However, would I go back if I had some time over in South Florida and I needed something to do? Yeah, it is a possibility. I don't have the same opinion as before when I went on, when I said I would never go back again. I do believe they've done a lot of decorating. I do believe they have a reasonably decent system as far as the food and the drinks and just the overall service. So it's not horrible for a little getaway, but yeah, that's what I have to say about my experience on board the Margaritaville at Sea Paradise cruise ship. The ultimate return. But this is what I have for the video in general. Of course, guys, if you've been on this ship, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm genuinely interested. By the way, I do, of course, have a lot more absolutely insane cruises coming up this year. Some of them even over in Europe with lines that I've literally never sailed with before. And as an American, it should be overall pretty interesting. So make sure you guys stay tuned. But of course, like I said, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit that like button on your way out. Subscribe if you haven't already. And know as usual, I love and appreciate every single one of you. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.